Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with embodiment specialists from around the world. I'm your host, Mark Walsh.
Doug.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, man.
Hey, glad to meet you in person.
Yeah, nice. I've been reading your work for a while and enjoyed listening to you on Joel's podcast not long ago.
Yeah, wonderful. What's the sabbatical you're heading off for?
After 10 years of crazy running around, running a company, I just decided that I wanted to breathe and live a bit and just step out of the madness of busyness that has taken over the world. It just makes no sense, and I wanted to really make a stand against that and just spend some time with my wife as well. So,
good for you.
Yeah, I don't need to tell you life's too short, you know.
Yeah, it's a great bumper sticker, but when we start to realize it viscerally, we have to take some kind of action.
Yeah. I was very direct with you. I hope that was okay. It sounded like it landed well. Like, I'm much more okay with mortality than a lot of people because I used to work in war zones and I've had my own kind of confrontations with it. And I just got the sense that you just really wanted to get what you do out there. And I thought, you know what, I can fucking help with that. So rather than beat around the bush, I just thought, be direct.
Well, I saw that and I thought, well, that's an interesting way to open a conversation. And I thought, okay, this guy's a risk taker. He tells it like it is. And dark humor is a really important thing and moving through this territory. So I appreciated it, and I can imagine that other people might not have appreciated it.
Yeah, it was a risk. And I think I'd heard a sort of tone on Joel's podcast and how you were around it. And I went, you know what? I think he's on the same page here and is going to take this well. So I kind of went, you know what? Time is short. I'm about to go on sabbatical and you're, seriously unwell. And I went, you know what? This is actually a real win-win to have you on. So I thought I'd take a chance.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate it. And I pay attention to those little things. I pay attention to how people open conversations and what people lead with. So it was a fresh start. So let me just provide a couple of things about context here. From what life is like in my world today. I'm having a bit of an off day in terms of comfort and lucidity. And part of what I'm doing is managing medications so that I get the benefits from the medications without some of the side effects, and the things that are going on inside my body have their own rhythm that are beyond mysterious. So I may lose my train of thought here and there. I may shift around because I'm physically uncomfortable. It's just part of the territory. And my invitation to you and to people who are listening or watching is listen and feel and be present with the context that this person is speaking from. I'm really transparent about this whole process and what it's revealing about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if you will. So anything's fair game, and we can play with this. And the synergy is not lost. The irony is not lost on me, Mark, that I just spent 5 years writing a book about presence and resilience and coping with complexity. And then the day I finished the manuscript, I'm diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And that thrusts me right into practicing everything that I've been writing about for the last 5 years.
Yeah, it feels like everything we've said is actually giving the context to people. So rather than I'll just say now to introduce you as an extremely well-respected coach. You're someone that's written books that I regard as world-class. They're on reading lists for trainings that I run for coaches around presence and around the body. And I reached out for you to say, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? Do you want to come on to this conference we're doing? And you responded like, you know what? I probably won't be around in November. And I basically just mailed back and said, okay, fuck it, man. Let's do it then. Let's get you on and let's give you a stage for the important things you have to say.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. We've never met in person, although we've known about each other's work for some time, and I appreciate the reaching out. And part of what I'm listening for, Mark, is the things that I believed were my purpose in life, bringing forth this book, giving this book and this new material some legs in the world, continuing the business that I ran. Well, the cancer put chopped all those plans to bits.
Yeah.
I wasn't moving forward on my timeline. And so I sold the business. The book got published. I transitioned a bunch of work things to other people who can deliver them very capably. And now I have a little bit of a second wind in my health situation that I didn't expect. And so out of the blue in my life lands this period of time. It might be a couple of days. It might be a couple of months, probably not longer than that. It's like I won the sweepstakes. And
Yeah.
what do I do with that? And so my listening has been, what's calling me? What am I being asked to contribute in these times? And my answer to that, which really has just been in the last couple of days, is what's showing up is conversations. And so what you offered, you stepped into that space with an invitation to a conversation. Neither you nor I know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But if we show up.
For listeners, this has literally just been put together an hour ago. We both went, you know what? Time is of the essence. Let's go for it. Mm-hmm. And there's a kind of rawness and spontaneity. You know, I'm aware as I was walking through the park on the way here, just to kind of get myself together a little bit. I went for a little walk in the park. I knew I had an hour before I talked to you. I just wanted to be present to myself and in nature. And I was like, you know what? I'm under-researched compared to most people I interview, particularly people of your caliber. And then I went, you know what? His thing's presence. So let's just start there.
Yeah. Well, after we got the call lined up, I spent the first 5 minutes trying to figure out something that I could send you in 10 minutes that you could then resource yourself with. And I realized there wasn't anything. So we're coming into this raw.
I read your first book, Presence-Based Coaching. I haven't read the leadership one. So, you know, some familiarity of your work. I mean, as you kind of come towards the end of your life then, I guess the question for me is, what is your life's purpose?
So there's a big question, and it could be answered from a lot of different levels. And the obvious level is I want to make a difference in the world, and at the crucial times that we're facing as a species, as a culture, as drivers of the ecosystem that we are dependent on for our own survival. We have to do some pretty major course correction if we're to come out on top of this thing. And so there are systemic changes that need to be made. And those systemic changes are reliant, I want to suggest, on the behaviors of individuals who are so, including you and I, who are so enculturated in a way of being that we can't find a way out of it. Mm-hmm. We literally can't see the blind spots that are disabling our capacity to make different choices. And so we all think we're good people. We all think we're doing the best we can. And yet the collective sum of the actions that we're taking together is driving us towards a cliff like a bunch of lemmings. And so how from this, the purpose then would be, how from the vantage point of an individual, do I do something that meaningfully makes a difference in the face of this stampede?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not. I'm answering your question with a question.
Yeah.
But I think my role is to pose that question.
That's what good coaches do, man. It's all about the questions.
Yeah.
Don't confuse my directness with a lack of care. You know, I'm aware time is of the essence. And what was present for me there as you were speaking was just the honor that you would actually give your time to me and to listeners.
Yeah.
Like, there's a way in which that actually is the same for all of us in life. You know, we're giving each other our precious, precious time. And for you, that's like underlined in red right now. So, right up front, I just want to say thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark. And I'm aware that, you could say, well, Doug's just promoting his books. Well, I'm not going to be around for very long for book sales. The reason that I'm spending this time with you is because it's lined up with this sense of purpose. And that's the screen that I'm using. The rest of the morning I spent making little handmade books for for my children that I can leave with them as a remembrance. And it has a little pocket in the back where they can put some of my ashes and carry that with them.
Wow.
And so that feels meaningful to me. And speaking through you to your audience feels meaningful to me. And I'd like to speak a little bit about the new book, if I might.
Please.
So the new book is a departure in that it's not explicitly written for coaches. It's written for leaders. And anybody who's coaching leaders, which is anybody who's coaching, will also derive a lot of benefit from it. What I think is different about the new book, Presence-Based Leadership, from any other book out there, is that it's asking people to take a very stretchy new set of perspectives. So you could say, okay, here's a toolkit for leaders who are approaching complexity and dynamism at a rate that's coming at us faster than it's ever come before. And so we need some new tools for seeing and assessing and making decisions about how we move in that complexity. And underneath that, of crucial importance, Mark, is the need for us to have an underlying set of meta competencies, being able to see how we're taking in information, see how we're and witness and intervene in how we're metabolizing that information within us, and then from that place of presence, take new actions in the world. This perspective taking is actually at the very core of it. You know, we can look at a set of skills and practices and actions that a leader can take, but if they don't have the capacity for awareness, the capacity to organize themselves in new ways, then the knowledge of all the tools and methods on the planet doesn't really help them. And so what the book is asking people, the entry point is, here we face this huge complexity. What can I do to resource myself? The ending point is this really big view of where we are, not only in human history, but in the story of the universe, the 13.8 billion year story of the universe, because the time scale is that big that we're operating within. Our history is that big. And so the choices that we make actually have an impact on how the universe unfolds in our particular little corner of the earth, our business, our team, our community, our system. And the biggest possible context, I think, is crucial to include in our understanding of what we're doing here. Hence your lead-off question, what's your purpose? That goes right to the biggest possible context.
And what do you see as the role of the body within that?
Thank you for asking that question. And I know that your work around embodied facilitation goes right to that. And this is a place I was hoping we would meet in this conversation. What does the body have to do with it? I think what happens sometimes, I think there's a wave, Mark. There's a wave of awareness around somatics and presence and body that has been building for several years now. And people are starting to recognize how crucial the including of the body is in self-work and in transformation work and in leadership work. And so people are kind of chunking in, they're lobbing in some kind of somatics piece in the teaching they're doing about coaching, about leadership, but it's disconnected. It's not integrated in the way that I know you are and some other leading edge teachers are, that I believe are ahead of the curve on this. So I want to propose and this is really the organizing structure, one of the central organizing structures for this new work, is that we can look at any system as having a bunch of levels to it. So for example, you operate as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as a leader, as a writer. You operate in these different realms as we'll just lump those into the category as you as an individual who's cultivating a certain identity in the world around these roles. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You interface with other people like me, like your students, like people who read what you write, your clients. You interface with those people, and that's the context within which you operate. you could think of it as a super system. Mm-hmm. If you're a super system that exists to perpetuate your identity, you operate within a super system that's comprised of a bunch of other identities running around bumping into each other in the world, doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Some of them have names, some of them don't. But that super system we can call your context. And your purpose in some way is to serve that context. So we have two layers of system. One layer of system is your context. The layer within that is your identity. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where we drop into the body. Your identity is comprised of and supported by these, what we might call psychobiological structures that we've built ever since when we were young children. And the purpose of those structures is to maintain and support that identity. But it's a finer level of system, a more granular level of system. When we fail to include the body in our analysis of how a whole integrated system is working, we might look at what's going on out there in the world.
Yeah.
We might even strive for some self-awareness about how our behaviors are affecting others. But we exclude the nature of how this psychobiology is producing the identity that's affecting the context.
Yeah, and not addressing that is going to undermine any change efforts because it's so fundamental.
Exactly. It's so fundamental, Mark, that we have not even, that we have excluded the source of the causality of our behaviors. And so we're trying to change the behaviors on a train that's out of control. But what we're not doing is looking at the causality of those behaviors within this psychobiological system. Make sense?
Yeah. So the causality, the deep structure that's holding it together there.
The deep structure that's holding it together. And what some people who begin to play around with somatics discover is, they can center themselves or they can ground themselves.
Yeah.
And they experience that there's a different state that they enter, a more resourceful state.
Yeah.
But what they don't see is that somatics is everywhere. The body is everywhere.
Yeah.
That excluding this whole granular part of the system is crucial. That including it is crucial to creating any kind of real physiologically supported change.
Yeah, because there's state, but there's also being. So yes, you can mess around with state, and that's quite a cool, quick win for people to get calmer or to get more focused or more creative. But it's actually the invisible kind of substrate of their very being, which is embodied. That's the kind of more fundamental piece. And even those relational contextual layers you talked about, I mean, we're embodied in those layers. There's other bodies around us. We're in a cultural body.
Yeah, beautifully said. We, in a way that experience of state change, that experience of being more centered or more grounded or more whatever it is, which we can produce easily, it's parlor tricks. It gets people's attention.
Yeah.
It gives somebody who's new to this a story, a cognitive story that helps their mind relax enough that they can experience more.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, all those are good things. Those are things that are necessary. But what we're moving towards is the recognition that the awareness of the soma, the bringing of and the directing of our attention to the soma and to our psychobiology is the very beginnings. It's the essential beginning of any kind of personal change process. And to the extent we exclude it, we're omitting really crucial information and crucial places where we can intervene with our automaticity. So I'm going to interrupt myself for just a moment here and say part of what I notice right now in my own state is how wound up I am.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling that. And
I'm noticing that too, because I'm really paying attention to you, Yeah. And I'm tuned into that as well. It's like, poof.
Yeah. So there's a lot of energy here. So I'm attuning to that, and I'm taking a moment simply to settle myself and ask myself, well, what's that about? Is it in service or does it get in the way? And and only you and ultimately your viewers can answer that. But my answer is this. Well, I'm a little wound up. Some of that is the steroids that I'm taking. So there's some pharmaceutical ramping up here. 2, there's a physical energy in me around these materials, and I'm suffering actually a creeping paralysis in my left arm, which you haven't seen because I can't raise it, and in my right leg. And so the energy, there's no place for that energy to go, and my container is smaller and tighter as a result of that. And then 3, Mark, I just feel such deep passion for the importance of this work that you're engaged in, that I'm engaged in, that so many others in this work are engaged in, about that we can make a difference. And so there's this urgency that I feel inside myself about my time is short to make a difference. And so what I'm doing is I'm touching into what I notice in my soma, and I'm getting curious about, well, what is that pace? What is that urgency?
Yeah, no, I was feeling that too on this end. And I was going, I had a story around it like, okay, this is a man who really knows his time is short, who has passion for what he does, and is like this somatic kind of just wanting to put it forward and out there. And that's what I kind of picked up on this and just jumped on this and went, you know what, let's do this, Doug, let's do this. Even in a way that was almost slightly socially inappropriate, because I was just like, I really felt that sense of urgency from you of like, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, okay, let's do it. And for me, I can get into that mode quite easily, and it risks what would be like an excess of that can sometimes not be received, can it, from people? So one thing for me sometimes is just easing back a little bit on that kind of urgency, Yeah.
Well, when you and I enter a conversation, you and I in a generic sort of way, when one individual enters a conversation with another individual, a number of things start happening that are usually beneath the surface of awareness, as I start formulating impressions of you and you of me that aren't conscious. And they're based on prior memories. They're based on prior relationships we've had. Maybe you remind me of my uncle, and my relationship with my uncle didn't go so well. And then that shows up in this conversation. That's not the case, just an example. But our histories are always getting triggered by the present.
Yeah.
And unless we have the awareness to notice, well, how is that triggering happening?
Yeah.
How is that showing up in my body? Then we get run by our memories instead of being a choice about how I want to show up in this particular moment with this particular person.
Yeah, like when you came on the call, I wasn't expecting to see like the tube. You have people listening won't be able to see this, but Doug has a tube in his nose, and it reminded me of my niece who had problems when she was born, and she had this same thing, and I kind of immediately felt this kind of protective parental kind of urge, and then I just went, okay, that's actually not appropriate right now.
Right.
Like that's not my role here. This isn't a baby. This is a well-respected coach who wants to give his message to people. And if I hadn't clocked that could have become in control of that relationship. And I just noticed the kind of heat and a movement towards my attention towards that tube.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and so we both modulate when we're present. We can modulate what it is that we're transmitting to others.
Yeah,
and we can also modulate. We can pay attention to how we're receiving that information and how we might be misinterpreting it and acting in ways that aren't actually appropriate or useful in this particular context. So all of those can happen if we are if we're paying sufficient attention. What I find is that when I start working with a client who is unaccustomed to working in the somatic domain, they may be very out of touch with their body, brilliant, but no awareness below the neck. It's important for me to have some kind of a narrative about what we're doing this for.
Yeah. What's the point? Why bother?
What's the point? And saying, well, trust me, it's worked for me, doesn't really cut it.
Yeah, they need a cognitive in.
Yeah, exactly. But when I can explain to people about how systems are nested and how I, as an individual leader, am operating within a system made up with other individual leaders, each of which is driven by their own conditioning and their own habit nature, then it becomes really crucial to operate, to recognize how I'm operating and be able to intervene with it so that I come across in ways that support the results I intend.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I mean, you've done a lot of coaching over the years. What does that boil down to? Like, what is your key message out there for like young coaches, young facilitators? Do you want to say, look, you can read my books, I've got loads of good theories, but what it really boils down to is this?
I think what it really boils down to is two things. One is the quality of our own embodiment, the quality of our own presence.
Yeah, with you 100%.
And is generally recognized across the coaching industry that presence is a core competency for the coach. ICF put it in their core competencies model. I think it belongs there. I think it's crucial. The first book, The Mindful Coach, is largely about that, about how do we begin to recognize the places where our own identities are getting in the way of being present, where we're actually operating as a coach in ways that serve our identity, but might not serve the client. And the second thing, and then how to bring ourselves back into presence. The second thing that I think is absolutely crucial, and this is, I think, a second wave of work around presence, is that it's absolutely crucial that the client begin to understand something about presence. Mm-hmm. That the client be able to access presence. Presence is not simply a competency for the client, for the coach, although it is that. Presence is also an outcome for the coaching client. So we can talk from now till the cows come home about particular behaviors that might be effective or things that the client is doing that get them in trouble. But if they don't have the present moment capacity to recognize that they are just about to do some egregious behavior that's not helpful, then they can't stop themselves. The train's, it's on automatic.
Yeah.
And so that present moment capacity unlocks everything else. It unlocks.
That's the key, isn't it? Because if they have that, they can spot all the things they're doing. Yeah. Most of my clients, like yours, I imagine, are pretty smart people, but it's the spotting it before the habitual trainers kind of left the station. Yeah. That's the key thing. So if they get that piece, then they kind of can sort themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason we talk about meta competencies is that capacity to witness ourselves in action, when we learn it in one domain, it's also available in other domains. And so I might be coaching somebody who runs a nuclear power plant, and I have, and this person might be working on a particular behavior that he wants to modulate differently in meetings. Yeah. And so some sort of a somatic practice about centering or grounding that seems to help the awareness in those situations. And then some other situation shows up that doesn't have anything to do with awareness in meetings, but all of a sudden that capacity is present in some completely different domain of his life, like in his marriage or in a crisis situation in a plant.
Sorry, after you.
Yeah, no, you've got a smile at the corner of your lips there. I can't wait to hear what it's about.
I was just thinking of a time I was teaching a Dutch executive who was very resistant to some leadership training, but started really getting into it and getting something from it. And then the second module, after a couple of months, he kind of came back and he just said to me very dryly, like, my wife likes your course. Just walked off. And I didn't ever get the full story, but what he was conveying was something I was teaching him in a business leadership domain was showing up in an intimate domain in a very positive way.
Yeah.
Just the way he said it just really reminded me of that. It just really made me smile. Like he transferred that across.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that that kind of inclusion of somatic practices that people can do that develop an inner capacity. It's about producing those business results or outcomes that they got there in the first place for, that brought them to coaching. but it's also about experiencing a fuller dynamism that they can bring to any situation. There was a lovely example of a man who ran a quality assurance function in a big manufacturing organization, and he was brilliant. He cared deeply about the organization, but he would go in and he was like a bull in a china shop with these operations people, and he was rude and arrogant, and he had authority over them, and he was in danger of losing his job because he rubbed so many people the wrong way. And one of the things that he did in coaching was to enter a sequence of ballroom dancing classes with his wife. And you might not think that had anything to do with work, but in ballroom dancing, you have to connect in the body. You have to sense your partner. You have to lead in a way that's graceful, that's an invitation. It was diametrically opposite to the way he'd been intervening in operations with the best of intentions. And he was practicing something in a radically different domain that had direct relevance to his work. And, by the way, it did wonders in his marriage as well.
Yeah. And how do we maximize that transfer? Because I'm with you on learning a somatic capacity, which we can then transfer across. And also sometimes, I've seen people that have done a lot of yoga or a lot of Aikido, and it hasn't transferred across. Even years of practice. And I've gone, man, if you just led your business like you lead in Aikido, you'd be great. And sometimes I just, as a coach, just make that link. That's enough. But how do we really maximize that transfer so it becomes a true somatic practice and not just a separate physical thing?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I would be curious about is how that client or how that leader is holding the practice. Do they see it as something that they're doing simply as exercise, or do they see it as something they're doing as a means to the cultivation of a meta competency of some support, of some form? So I think it's to do somatic practice in an integrated way. We have to, and we as coaches often have to provide this. We have to provide a narrative about why this is relevant and how doing this particular practice over time builds new neural pathways. And there's plenty of popular stuff that's very accessible that people can read about this. But we have to provide them with that. And I think, Mark, as I know you do, we have to practice it ourselves. We have to be on the mat in Akita. We have to be doing practices. We have to be up on current information so that when the client begins to question, well, what does this have to do with this particular behavior I'm trying to change, that we have a response to that they can try on for themselves. I think people say, well, how do you do this with scientists and engineers? They're so left brain. And I'm actually descended from a long line of scientists. So they're my favorite audience, because what we do in coaching is research. They just happen to be the researcher and the lab rat.
Yeah, let's do an experiment is a good frame for those kind of people. Like, hey, give it a try, see how it affects you, report back next week.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work, well, that's really useful information. We'll try something else.
Yeah, it's a good frame.
We infuse that spirit of curiosity, of wonderment, of a childlike mystery, and we infuse that into the coaching process so that it's fun and engaging and interesting. We become learners together.
How's your energy level?
I'm doing well. I had a little crash earlier before we talked, but the conversation is stimulating, and what I'm noticing is the importance of these kinds of conversations and in this phase of this process. It's nutritious for me.
Okay, good. I wanted to check. This is nutritious and not draining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't have an office anymore. I'm actually in the bedroom, and we just moved into this new house. And there are things in this house that are that we've put together as artworks and reminders of what's important. My wife is working on an extraordinary sculpture right now that'll sit on our living room in about 2 days when she finishes putting that together. But the art that we're creating and the space that we're creating is a space that reminds us of the cycle of life, that reminds us of mortality, that reminds us of death, not in a fearsome kind of way, but in a this is the turning of the wheel, and that we can embrace it, we can welcome it, we can talk to our grandchildren about it, and the blog that we've been writing has been. My wife doesn't really hold herself as a writer, but we've been doing this together, and what she's put on the blog has been extraordinary. So we're actually being very transparent about it, about our own process.
Yeah.
And what it's catalyzing are really interesting conversations back and forth about people's own relationship with death and dying, and people making changes, people saying, "Oh, I was going to retire in about 5 years, and I'm moving it up because I'm getting that time is short." Really making significant changes in their life. So the platform from which I'm doing that is really different than the platform has been for the last few years, and what it's allowing is just a really creative kind of engagement with largely with people I haven't met. Around things that matter, and that brings me a lot of joy.
You know, my experience of closeness to death in various forms, my own and others, is that it can bring a surprising amount of joy and gratitude and connection with those who are with us. It might seem like a morbid topic to many people, and I just want to kind of meet it head on here. This is the context we're in, and this is why we kind of rush this call through, and like there's gifts that come with facing that, right?
Yeah. Are there things, Mark, that would be that you'd particularly like to have happen in our conversation now? I'm going to extend that invitation for you to take a moment to be present with yourself and see what arises for you that's germane and maybe unique to this moment. Yeah.
So I'm feeling kind of warm towards you. I'm glad we talked about your book some already. I feel happy about that. And what's most present for me is just fearlessly facing this precious and extreme in many ways context we find ourselves in, like a conversation on the verge of mortality.
Yeah. Is there a question or a direction there?
No. I feel very, normally I'm much more like, hey, I want to get this out of an interview. Yeah. And today I feel like something around spaciousness is important here. Like, what do you want to say, man?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you. So I want to offer something. So my father is 89, and one of my best friends, he was down here a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to him about wanting to have him by my side when I die. And it's not a conversation any father wants to have with his son. Nobody should have to watch their child die. And yet I know how meaningful it would be for me to share that moment with him, that it would help make it a great moment. And it's a moment don't get me wrong, it's a moment I would rather not have. But if I'm going to be dealt this hand, that is one of the things that would make it special. And of course, he doesn't live near me, and there's no way we can guarantee that. And so spontaneously, what arose out of that expression of desire was that we recorded his voice reading 12 different poems, all of which had to do with death and mortality and living in some way. And so if he's not there in person, I still have his voice with me. So I offer that as not like everybody ought to go and talk to their parents and start recording their voices for like some sort of a replicable tool. And I think that's the mistake that's often made in coaching and leadership training and facilitation is we say, oh, there's something, I can replicate that, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is that we each, Mark, have the opportunity to take a look at the conditions that we're in, the conditions that surround us, the unique conditions that surround us. So you shared earlier in this conversation that you're taking some time out because life has gotten so busy and overwhelming that you're losing touch with some of the things that are really important to you. And it's a bold move. And so you're responding to those conditions in a creative way through this sabbatical. That's what I would urge, that each of us really start to ask those questions. What am I doing?
Yeah.
With what I'm doing, what do I really care about? Am I in service to some organization's mission that I don't care about? Am I doing what I care about most? What moves are available to me that I'm not seeing and not acting upon, that are creative responses to these conditions and that enable new possibilities? And so when I look at these conditions with my dad, he can't travel so well anymore. And I'm in the process of dying. And this is something I want. What can we create together that's new and unique and that touches both of us?
Yeah.
A terminal disease is a big wake-up call. And I used to talk to my kids a lot when they were younger about learning from other people's life situations so that they didn't have to learn from their own. So my invitation to all your listeners is ask yourself what's important.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, what moves can you make right here, right now, that start to put what's important to you right in front? That's what you're organizing around.
Yeah. You're not going to be at the end of your life saying, hey, I wish I'd sent more emails.
Yeah, exactly.
Another million for that company I worked for. Do you know what I mean? It's like, for me, it was just a stand of saying, you know what, enough. Stepping out of this madness. What matters to me is taking time with myself and my wife. Yeah. And that's what I want to do, and that's okay. It felt like almost like a rebellious stand. But talking about your father, something just came up for me I want to share. This is my dad died about a year ago, and I started kind of like standing like him. And crossing my arms like him, and I even got a bit fatter like him, and kind of my sister was like, you really look like Dad, it's freaking me out, And then I realized I could like step into that consciously. There's a way I can cross my arms and like take on some of his being, which is in me as a somatic memory. One of my old Akita teachers, Mr. Smith, died, and before he died I interviewed him, and he says, when I move with someone, they become a part of me and I become a part of them. And there was a way in which, like, somatically we're intermingled. And I'm not holding this up as, like, the afterlife or, kind of false hope or anything like that. Yeah. But it's something that occurred to me when you're talking about your father, is how we're somatically so intermingled, and that changes my relationship to death somewhat.
Beautiful. So I'd be curious, Mark, if you'd be willing to do this as a little experiment right now. It's just to take on that shape and be curious together about what happens.
Yeah, he kind of crosses his arms like this. What it kind of brings for me is a sort of like letting it go. Like, he was kind of easygoing guy. I'm a bit more of a kind of like driven guy. Yeah. And that body's kind of maturer, and it's just kind of like, it is what it is. Maybe I don't have to ask the perfect interview question or impress all the listeners or, impress you. It's like, like, okay, whatever. Yeah. Kind of Irish ease that you would have. So yeah, like it's a nice embodiment that I can step into sometimes now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. So I'm doing a little bit the same. I don't know your dad, obviously, and I scarcely know you. But what I'm doing is simply just trying to sense in myself what you're doing there. So I folded my arms, tilted a little sideways, and found this place that a place of a little bit of ease, like not taking things too weightily. And And I don't assume that that's data about you.
Yeah.
But that if I experiment with you at the same time, something might get discovered that's useful and interesting.
Well, I noticed as you said that, as you named it in terms of ease, I kind of breathed out in a sigh, kind of relaxed way, like, okay, yeah, he heard me, or you got it somehow. And that, I want to hold this up because this isn't about me. I want to hold this up as a real nice little example of somatic coaching.
Yeah.
Like how simple somatic coaching can be. What we just did there was real straightforward.
Yeah.
Like you were noticing your body, I was noticing mine. You set me up a little somatic experiment to do. You kind of felt how that was mirrored back. I noticed myself relax when you named something that was on the verge of naming, which is one of the things coaches do well, I think. So that was a gift, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We didn't plan that, by the way.
No, but to the listeners, none of this is planned. This is real present space stuff. So,
I think in the literature, the leadership literature around complexity does a lot of talking about safe to fail experiments. And this is something that we can, as leaders and as coaches of leaders, that we can really cultivate in our work, that everything that we do becomes an experiment that we can be curious about. And actually the driving for results, the focus on numbers, making the numbers, that closes down the space for learning, closes down the space for change.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to suggest is that by opening up that space, and you've used the word spaciousness several times in this conversation, by opening up that space, by allowing ourselves to sense and feel and bring more fluidity into our body, that we actually increase our capacity as learners. Now, we can establish that verbally in the contracting and in the conversation with our clients, but we can also, and probably even more powerfully, do that in the ways that we show up in our own bodies when we're engaging with our clients.
Yeah. Spaciousness is a move we can make somatically at any time, even when stressed, and it resources us for creativity. Brings in play for me. Then that might sound like a strange topic to talk about on a podcast about death and presence and these kind of things, but it's like it's very Irish of me actually. But there's like what's your relationship to play at this point in your life?
My relationship with play
as you approach death.
I find that it's pretty important. And every Sunday I have my grandkids over, and if I could, let's see, I don't know that I can get my feet up to you, but if I could get my feet up to you, I would show you my bright scarlet painted toenails on my right foot and my bright green painted toenails on my left foot. The green brings out the green in my, I can show you my oxygen hose. This is the color of my toenails on my left feet. We had a little spa session with my 5-year-old grandson the other day, and he did up my toenails, and I'm very proud of my new look.
Got it. Wow, that's epic. I realized today that spa was the first part of the word Spartan. So, the rest and the warrior capacities have to go together. But my niece likes to do my hair as well in all sorts of styles. So I've been subject to that kind of thing before.
Yeah.
What are the main gifts you want to leave behind then, Doug? Your life has been full. You've written great things. You've coached, I think, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. You're well known internationally. But what are the real gifts you want to leave behind?
I want to leave behind. Something that has its own intelligence. So let me explore a little bit and see where that goes. Because I've never actually said those words before. And so part of being present is that we don't simply spout out something that we've rehearsed.
Say the words again, Doug, for me.
I want to leave behind something that has its own intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so something that was rehearsed would be, I would have a 30-second elevator pitch about what I want to leave behind. I actually don't have a 30-second elevator pitch, but something that has its own intelligence is something like this book. Like if I had another 2 years on this book, not to rewrite it, but to work with it and to refine it and to bring it into systems, it could move to the next level. And I don't have that. It's dying is like this. I think I haven't done it yet. I'll let you know more after I die.
Well, by the time people hear this, you may have done. This is voices from the grave kind of thing by the time people are hearing this.
Voices from the far side. But what I imagine is that one metaphor that's useful for me is that that we all, when we die, we're like standing up on this hillside, looking down over a dark pool down below. And that we get curious in this dark pool. If we chuck a rock into it, what'll happen to the ripples in that pond? And so we pick up a rock and we bend back, and we chuck it out there over space and watch it fall and fall and fall. And then the lights go out. We don't get to hit it. We don't get to see that rock hit the water. And so, Mark, we all die with rocks in the air. And this book is like a rock in the air. The book is being born right as I'm passing away. And so what I have to believe and trust is that the book has an energy, and it serves as an attractor. There will be people that will see the book and it'll go right over their heads, but there are going to be a lot of people that look at that book and say, this is the next thing. This is the next integrative thing that brings complexity science, interpersonal neurobiology, somatics, mindfulness, and transpersonal psychology that brings these things together with adult development in a leadership context. This is the next thing. And those people are going to take that work and they're going to morph it into their own contexts. And that's what I hope to leave behind. It's something that has enough intelligence, enough novelty, plays enough of a provocateur role that it creates something else that I'll never know about, but it creates something that's worthwhile in the world. It would surprise and delight me if I knew about it.
Beautiful. I found myself welling up at this point. I'm also aware that we're almost on time, which is what I always say at the end of podcasts and has a particular meaning today. And normally I ask two things at the end, and I'm going to stick to that format. One is, where do people find out more? And the second thing is, do you have a final message, which again has a different flavor today?
Yeah. Well, people can find out more by going to the presencebased.coaching.com website, presence-based coaching. And there are links. There's a table of contents on the table of contents and a bunch of stuff about the book on there. You can also order the book Presence-Based Leadership on Amazon. There are two books, Presence-Based Coaching, Presence-Based Leadership, and actually a third book, The Mindful Coach. But the titles of the second one and the third one are a little confusing. The one we've been talking about here today is the third book, Presence-Based Leadership. And then the last thing that I would leave people with, I think, is really, we've said it. It's you never know how long you've got. None of us know how long we've got. This was a total surprise. I was the poster child for healthy living, and none of us know how long we've got. So do what matters. Play where it counts.
Doug, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's great to have a chance to get to know you and play in such an impromptu way.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to get more. If you'd like to help us build the Embodied Tribe, leave a review on iTunes or share this on your social media. If you're interested in training globally, sign up to receive the newsletter at embodiedfacilitator.com. Until next time, welcome home to the body.